Right. Hey, everybody. I'm back at it with another little tutorial. This one's on Virtual Drumline. I'm going to just go through the 4 different ways that I kind of process through this stuff. Um, but the guys at Tapspace, man, they did such a good job of recording these sounds. I think they did it in a field, and I know they did it about 15 years ago, and yet it's still our standard, which unbelievable. First, you can just go in Sibelius and you can hit export on everything and you can send it out, and that's the first level of doing this stuff, which is what I did for a long time. Then I learned that if I exported things, put them into Logic, and then EQ'd them, that it was a little bit better. So this is just the drum line, just straight exported from Sibelius. And so you can hear what that's going to sound like. So that's from a show called The Elements from Standing O, Rob Stein. Eric Shriver did the battery beats. And so my whole point with this project was I needed to add a cymbal part. And I almost always do my cymbal parts in MIDI in the DAW because some of the stuff just doesn't line up great, like some of the cymbal scrapes and whatnot. And the sizz sucks. Like I want to make sure that those are like perfect for my playback. So anyway, but we're not going to look at the cymbal part. So that was the first way. The second way is what I do, and I get a little bit more information from each track. So I have the snare, tenor, and bass. I can pan them a little bit, and I showed that last week with how to make sure that you're actually getting all the information panned. But the other thing I do is I put an EQ on each of these. So right here you can see I ducked a couple frequencies that just I don't think sound great, and I pushed right here for the snare shot. So I will A/B these. I think just need to add. Oh, and the cool thing, yeah, with the Fab Filter, you can A/B this all day and hear them back and forth. So let's make sure. Solo that guy. All right, so here's just the snare. So for me, that just puts it in the mix where I want it as far as what frequencies are speaking and what's not. That's where we're ducking this low cut, high pass, whatever. If you high pass too high here, I'll play this. It's to sound really synthetic, right? But there's not a lot of advantage of having any of this information down here. Where the bass drums need to live and the quads need to live there. So I let that just get cut where I don't need it. So the same thing with the tenors here. There's a couple frequencies that I just don't love, and we can A/B that. Yeah, cool. So it's not a lot, right? And none of the stuff needs to be a ton. We're just trying to get a little bit more clarity. Same with the bass here. The bass actually has a bunch of treble frequencies that I'm not in love with. So I did a little bit more. These are a little bit more drastic than I normally do. But I don't know, the bass drums can really get overwhelming, especially as you start adding other voices in, and I try to just keep it as focused as I can. So here's everything together with EQ on it. So, and I almost forgot, down here I actually have a version of this that we can hear back to back. So here's, it's going to start with just the straight export, and then the second one is going to be just with some EQ. Put it in the right spot. Here we go. Yeah, and you can hear the volume difference too. Um, and it's because I'm using that FabFilter multiband compressor and also their limiter. The FabFilter stuff is awesome. The whole pack. I use almost everything in it, and it's definitely worth the money. So you should check that out. But that definitely gives it a boost, and it still lets it have a lot of musicality. All right, so the last thing that you can do, like the most detailed version that you could go with this stuff, is actually exporting the MIDI track into your DAW and using the full power of the samples that were recorded. One of the big ones here is this first sound, which is a decrescendo buzz. That was a performance, which is way better than trying to get that to like perform in Sibelius by you telling it lots of MIDI information or just hitting the buzz. Like that was a recorded performance. And there's a couple of those. Like I think this is the crescendo one. That's shorter. There it is. Yeah. There's a couple different ones. So, I mean, those are great. And to have those are way more realistic. So let's just listen to the snare part here. And you'll see that I put in every note right and left. There's different velocities. You can adjust, like right here where it gets from cooler to hotter colors. That's a crescendo. And you can actually dial in those crescendos just a little bit better when you're working in the DAW than you can in Sibelius. At least you can do it easier. Anyway, here you go. So this is just all the notes that were that I did, and all I had to do was just drag everything in. The buzzes, you have to delete like all the little information because it'll say buzz, 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 basically like 100 buzzes right here, versus just this performance, which is cool. So here's the snare. So I should mention that you can see this MIDI information right here. That's the mod wheel, and that's actually changing zones from the center to the edge. And it's, again, really simple to do in here. So here's with everything else, the quad part and the bass part. I wanted to show you the basses too. The unisons in the bass part that are recorded, like if you just hit the slash on Sibelius, is just a performance of a bass drum unison, which is cool, but it's not always the performance of the drums that you have. So if you only have 3 bass drums, or if you're using the top 5 or the bottom 5 or whatever, the unison sound is going to change a lot. That's why I go in here and I'll put the whole unison in. So there's 5 drums on the right hand, 5 drums on the left hand of the drums that I'm using. So let's just listen to that whole thing. Here we go. Yeah, so that gives you just some more detail. Another part that is a Jim Casella thing that I just found out about. I think it was like 2 years ago at the Arcadia Symposium. Shout out to Tony and all those guys that do that. Man, it was crazy. But a little trick that Jim Casella did on a piece was he used the Mylar and the Kevlar and mixed it with the snare. And I realized that if I did that a little bit, I can either add more contact sound. So if I wanted more contact sound in my snare line, I would add in this Kevlar snare that they recorded. And if I wanted a little bit more wetness, I'd use the Mylar. And I almost always, if I do this, um, mix in the Mylar just a little bit. Um, and thankfully, they're key mapped the same. So when you copy paste, the shot is still the shot, no matter if it's on either one. So let's listen to just the Kevlar in and out here. Here we go. So depending on what snare sound you're wanting, you can really dial it in with all this stuff. Like I said, I usually just use a little bit of um, the Mylar and just to get a little bit more wet sound. That's how I tune my snares, and that's what I want in the playback. So, obviously, if you overdo it, you can really start hearing the actual Mylar drum, which is not the purpose. I just wanted to wetten the snares up. So that's a rundown of my process. If I have the time, I definitely will go through, especially like for indoor shows, and I'll dial in every sound. If it's an outdoor book and it's 8 minutes, I will export the snare. Sometimes I'll put a Mylar in the score so I can get that wetness, and then I'll just export it right from the score and do it just in the waveforms and just EQ each one. You don't have to balance a lot because the guys at Tapspace, again, they did such a good job balancing samples in that you don't have to really mess with that a whole lot. And then, yeah, I go from there. So here it is down here. We're going to listen to the original, the exported, and then just the Logic, like the stock version. You can also go in and tune these. So, for instance, like the quads are a little bit low if you're doing an indoor line. Like Pulse's, I matched it to Pulse's quads from this last indoor, and to get up to the Pulse drum 2, you have to bring this all the way up 1, which, trust me, that's a lot. For the snares, you need to bring them up like 0.5. The bass drums, I don't touch those. I would just use the higher pitched drums that Virtual Drumline comes with instead of like the bottom 5. I would just use the top 5. So yeah, so that's that. Whether you like that or not, it was just an option. So I just wanted to show you the difference in the sounds that you can make through those last two. So yeah, here we go. I have it muted. So yeah, you can really hear the difference in the quad voice in those last two, how the pitch changed. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed this, and if you guys have any questions, just let me know. I think the next one that I'm going to do is a marimba playback shootout between Virtual Drumline, the East West guys stuff, 8Dio, and the Sonic Couture marimba. So I think it's really interesting to hear all those. Yeah. Anyway, hope you guys are keeping safe with the COVID stuff, and I'll probably make another one of these every week while I'm still locked up. All right. See you guys.